Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome to the Right Time with Bomani Jones. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here. It's been a long week for your boy. You want to tweet me? Do so on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Clinton Yates. You know the disclaimer. If you step into my mentions incorrect, I will embarrass you in front of your friends and your family, and I will not apologize. It's been a long week. I'm very happy to be here. I'm feeling very confident today, Shannon. I just want you to know that. Got my first win on Around the Horn earlier this week. Was on Outside the Lines earlier today. Seen a lot of my friends and family because I'm here in Bristol. And for those of you asking, not unlike the Roots, people want to know where Malik, he's right next to me. Shannon is sitting right next to me because we're right here in Connecticut.
I appreciate that. This is exciting that we're in the same studio.
You know?
It's a first. It's a
Same
first.
room.
You're winning Around the Horn, and we're in the same studio doing the show.
Correct. So the TV lights are off. The blazer has been removed. The collared shirt is off. The wave cap and my 5-panel are on. Got the T-shirt moving. I'm ready to do this. 888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. If you want to get at me, I'll talk to you. We'll have a little chit-chat if you so choose. But right now we got to talk about football. I got on that TV show, Shannon. I said that I like Thursday Night Football because I like the fact that it's extremely craptastic. They make them wear weird uniforms. They put it on the oddball night, sort of like the JV game. And we typically get a bad football matchup. That wasn't the case yesterday. Rams-Niners was actually a decent football game, even if it was a strange one. It was the highest scoring game in Thursday Night Football history. Jared Goff had a heck of a game. 22 for 28, of 28, excuse me. Didn't get a 300-yard game, but went for 292. 0 turnovers is the big part of that game for me if you're paying attention to what Jared Goff has been doing in terms of how his career played out. 80 combined points. Game was decided by 2 points. Lots of weird plays as well. Had a muffed punt, muffed kickoff, had an onside kick. Yeah, a lot of strange things that went on. But the more interesting part about this to me, more so than anything, is the fact that we have become so used to Thursday night being an unwatchable debacle. That sort of rhymed, but I just freestyled that off the dome. That the fact that we got any scoring at all or any sort of a situation in this game that was worth watching was a surprise. I got people in my mentions talking about, I heard y'all dogging Thursday Night Football. Well, now you got a good one. How many years have we been at this Thursday Night Football nonsense? At least 2. And you got one good game out of it and all of a sudden everybody's wrong? I don't think so. And it was a good game in that weird way that was an entertaining game without necessarily being a great football game. There was one thing that could have made it an even better football game. Alas, the Zebras ruined it. There was a time, there was a chance to get back in that game. You know, you thought the Niners had a chance. That OPI call. I mean, it's one of those calls you see where you say to yourself, why am I watching this sport? If that's what's going to happen, what am I even looking at? Ticky-tack beyond belief. Didn't give the Niners a chance. Shannon, you watched the last couple minutes of that game. What did you think of that call?
I didn't agree with it. It was an offensive pass interference on Trent Taylor, the deceptively fast slot receiver. Trent Taylor. I guess they say he pushed off to get open. It was a first down conversion. He caught the ball, and they said he pushed off. I didn't see it. He didn't extend his arm. Chris Collinsworth, he didn't see it. One of those. Everyone think if it was obvious and he extended the arms, it wasn't anything. The guys were locked up. He got away. He made the play. Let's keep it moving.
If that's offensive pass interference, there's offensive pass interference on every single play of every single down in the NFL. Period. I mean, that's playing football. That had a chance to be a legit Clásico, but the referees botched it. And that's the more disappointing thing about that game to me. Okay, it was entertaining. Okay, we saw Aaron Donald say that, give that man his money. He asked for that cash on that last sack. The Rams figured that out, by the way. But the fact that they managed to botch what could have been an even better ending. Oh, what a disappointment. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Clinton Yates filling in here for Bomani Jones on the right time. There were some other things I have to get to about this because I'm a bizarre stickler about uniforms. I don't have a problem with the color rush in general as a matter of course. It's funny looking for some, it's good looking for others. The Bengals, by the other week had some tremendous looking joints on. One of the better combinations of unis I've seen on any football team anywhere in a long time. Different discussion. The Rams, because of the helmet rules that the NFL had, they had decals on over the white. The Rams have switched to the white and blue. But because of concussion situations, you're not allowed to change helmets. So they didn't actually have different helmets. They had decals from the yellow, hearkening back to the Jim Everett era, hearkening back to the Eric Dickerson, Rex Specs, Jerry Curl era, a great era if you ask me. But I have one issue with the Rams' yellow helmets. The specific hue doesn't match the jerseys. It's bothering me all night. It's like when you go to buy a black suit and the pants and the jacket are a little different shades and you don't really notice until you get out in the sun and you're like, ooh, that's a little tacky. That doesn't look right. Why even bother trying to get the same color if you're not going to actually match the hues? Get it together, Rams.
What I don't get is if they're making this big push to go back to LA, they're changing the helmets, like you said, the white and blue. Why not go with either an all white or an all blue?
That's a good point.
Like, why even bring back up the gold if you're getting away from that?
That's a good look. That is a very good look. But the thing is, their regular unis already sort of look like that. That's the thing. So they got to do something that sets them apart. I know that their regular unis already look like that because I actually attended an NFL football game the other day. Your man was out in Los Angeles, and I walked into the LA Coliseum and watched an entire game of football. That was weird. Why is that relevant? Because the Rams lost that game. But the Rams won this game. And the Rams won their first game. Leading us to the question, of course. If I could put an echo on my voice on this, I would. Are the Rams for real? The answer to that question is the same as the answer to the question that one Sammy Watkins answered incorrectly. The Rams are as for real as the earth is flat. Just so y'all know that. Don't get it twisted, though. Their offense looks good. I'm very impressed with what Sean McVay has done with that team. Last year, they were running around like a squad that legitimately had no business being on a professional football field. McVay, who came from Washington, by the by, where I live, has at least managed to install a situation in which they look like they know what they're doing. Last in the NFL in yards each of the past 2 years, just in case you didn't know that. Gurley is back on point. The Rams are at least moving, even if they are not for real. Don't oversell this, NFL fan. It was a good Thursday night game. It was a better than average Thursday night game. It could have been a great Thursday night game.
All right, what was more surprising for you, the fact that we actually had a good Thursday night game or the fact that Jared Goff played well in said Thursday night game?
I think it was probably Goff, but if you've watched the Rams, as I have, as I said, in 3D with my eyeballs, you can see that they actually just look like an outfit that knows what they're doing. And that was the main thing I think Jared Goff needed. It ain't necessarily, I'm not going to chalk talk his drops and his reads just yet, but the body language of the squad and of the player is important for a guy of that age. That, to me, is the most obvious difference in what Jared Goff does. And I think that comes from coaching. I've said it before. The worst coach position in football is quarterback. And if you can find someone that knows at least how to get some confidence in a guy, to the point that he at least has an idea of what he's doing, never mind feels good doing it, you automatically have a better football team. And I think that's what's going on with the Rams. They have moved from deplorable to reasonable. I'm not going to go so far as to say that they're going to make a lot of noise, because I don't believe that.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. I write for The Undefeated. The show is presented by Progressive Insurance. You want to tweet me, do so on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates. You want to give us a phone call, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Going to switch gears to something a little bit more serious here. And by a little bit more serious, I mean a lot more serious. Everybody knows who Aaron Hernandez is, former New England Patriots player. Convicted of killing one man, had been in jail for some time before he committed suicide. His story was, I'd say probably, I don't know that I can think of a bigger off-field story in the NFL since, I don't know, that's one I'd have to think about for a long time. It was a major one. Patriots were a big deal, obviously. And what happened to him has now suddenly taken a very different turn as a result of news that came out yesterday. As it turns out, Aaron Hernandez had a severe case of what we call CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Is that how you say that word? I'm not that good at that word. That's why we all call it CTE. Doctors at Boston University say he had stage 3 out of 4 of the disease, which can cause violent mood swings, depression, and other cognitive disorders. His attorney said, "We're told it was the most severe case they had ever seen for someone of Aaron's age." He was 27 years old. Now, as a result of this news, the family, shall I say the estate of Aaron Hernandez, is suing the NFL and the Patriots. They're claiming that the league and the Pats failed to protect their players' safety, leading to the disease that deprived Hernandez's 4-year-old daughter of her father's companionship. There's a lot to unpack here, y'all. Number one is the NFL's relationship to this disease. We've all seen the movie Concussion. We've all heard about what we know the NFL tried to do and not do in order to make sure that people were either obfuscated from the truth or outright sort of, I don't want to say lied to, but there was enough plausible deniability that they didn't know what was going on to prevent themselves from having to pay out a bunch of money to people who ended up getting hurt down the line and maybe ended up killing themselves. A lot of famous cases over the years of that. Dave Duerson and Junior Seau come to mind right off the top. League recently agreed to pay $1 billion to retired players who claimed it misled them about the dangers of football. All that said, that is all background, common knowledge, prereq stuff for this. But you apply that to Aaron Hernandez, and you get into a very sticky situation. Let's hear what Jose Baez, his lawyer, had to say about whether or not anyone noticed the symptoms.
There are symptoms, and of course, there were symptoms that when hindsight is 20/20, you look back, and there are certain things that we may have noticed, but you don't know. So the answer to that question is yes and no.
Now, why is this of import now? Well, because in a legal scenario, and I would say to the average NFL fan, the dots you connect are pretty basic, even if a tad irresponsible. Because the question that comes to mind immediately is, well, did CTE cause him to commit murder? On some level. And if it did, is the NFL somehow potentially, even if not legally, morally on the hook for that? Is that a fair question in my eyes? Not really. And I'm not some guy who defends the NFL on a regular basis. Not remotely. But I think the question of whether or not the NFL knew enough about Hernandez's mental and physical situation to prevent him from having played or thus led him to a situation that would have led to suicide is one thing. But the average person looks at this and says, well, man, I wonder if that's the reason he killed someone. But I can't put those two things together in terms of the NFL's culpability in my heart or in my mind. Not remotely. Because implying that an injury on the field, or rather an injury that comes from playing a sport, thus leads you to committing crimes off the court, that just, oh man, that weaves too many things together that I'm comfortable aligning with one another intellectually. It just doesn't necessarily make sense to say, oh, well, considering we know apparently absolutely nothing about CTE, yeah, it might have had something to do with the fact that he ended up in jail for murder. Again, separate discussion from the lawsuit. But I think if you pull back macro on this, that's what people want to know. Did Hernandez kill somebody because he had CTE? I don't know that it's fair to say that. I don't think it would be fair for anybody to make that assumption. Doctors don't know a whole lot about CTE. Never mind guys yelling on the radio or y'all thankfully listening at home or wherever you are on your local dial or on the ESPN app. I don't think any of us are qualified to do that. Now, I'm not overprotecting on the NFL here. I'm just saying be real about where you're going to lay your criticism in terms of what we're specifically talking about. Don't be blaming the NFL for a man's murder, although it does make sense to want to know what the NFL knew about Aaron Hernandez before he entered the league. The Patriots as well, for that matter, as they drafted him. The league says they haven't seen the lawsuit yet and they haven't commented, and the Pats said the same thing, which is to be expected. But I do want to know what Patriots fan thinks about this, because their relationship with the league is not a good one. But in this case, you're on the same side, if you will, protecting against this lawsuit. There are people who think that this is an awfully, let's just say, slimy lawsuit on behalf of the Hernandez family. I'm not willing to go so far as to say all that. But none of this looks good for the league. You got a guy who was a star, who was convicted of murder, ultimately acquitted in a court of law in terms of the eyes of Massachusetts as a result of him committing suicide. He played 3 seasons in the NFL. He's 27 years old. It's not a good look for the league on any level whatsoever, no matter the outcome of the lawsuit. CTE is clearly a huge problem with football. It's a big problem in a lot of sports, but the NFL at some point is going to have to address this as their main obstacle going forward. Because at this rate, well, it basically just looks like nobody knows what they're doing, and that's just too risky to have people operating like that.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. You want to tweet me? Do so on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Right now, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. For those of you who don't know me or haven't heard me on this network before, you might not know that baseball is my sport of choice. Sport I played, sport I was best at, and sport I care the most about. I attend many baseball games a year, far more than any other sport I go to. Not all of them of the major league variety. I see games in a lot of different ballparks in a lot of different places for a lot of different reasons. Recently, a girl was hit by a ball at Yankee Stadium. Many of you might have heard this story by now. 105-mile-an-hour foul ball off the bat of Todd Frazier. It was during Wednesday's game against the Twins. Led to a lot of players saying they need protective netting to be extended down the foul lines, basically as far as they can go. Rob Manfred, the Major League Baseball commissioner, on a visit to the Padres Thursday, said he was encouraged by the number of conversations that Major League Baseball had had with clubs that day about additional netting for 2018. A lot of people have said when it comes to safety at the ballpark, this is an obvious no-brainer. Now, understand something here. I do not disagree with this one thing. Extending nets as far down the foul lines as possible would 100% unequivocally, to quote Stephen A. Smith, make baseball games safer for people in the stands. I will also say this. Extending nets down the foul lines will also 100% unequivocally fundamentally change the nature of fans' interactions with the game of baseball. It's not just about the sight lines, y'all. I'm not talking about the concept of getting used to a net in front of your face just to watch baseball. What I'm talking about is the parts before the game, parts after the game, the parts during the game. Get a little dribbler to third. What happens? A third base coach in a helmet picks that bad boy up and flips it into the crowd. Kids come running down the aisle just to get a little piece of history and something they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. What happens a lot of times when you go to a minor league ballpark? If you've never seen this, you don't know this, but sometimes friends and family will come down and straight up give the players food or whatever they need to deliver to them at the ballpark. Little care packages, whatever it may be. It's a nice little moment of actual human physical interaction that is something you only see in baseball. Something we've seen happen more recently as well. Actual Major League ball players having a toss with a little leaguer or some other kid in the crowd. I.e., throw me this ball and I'm going to throw it back. Can't do that with netting. And as importantly, if you want to get historical about this, some of you might recall a little something we like to call the first pitch in baseball. You might not know this. Shannon, you might know this. That originated in the district with presidents throwing the ball from the crowd. Something else that would have never happened with a net-up. So don't get it twisted. Putting nets up will undeniably make the game safer for fans. But baseball, unlike any other sport, the interaction between the crowd and the people on the field, be they players, be they ball boys and girls, be they managers, be they umpires, fundamentally changes with nets extended the old way down. It's not the same thing. It's not hockey. It's not putting nets behind goals to prevent pucks from hitting people in the face. A young lady died in Columbus many years back, and the NHL made that move, and they made it smartly. But it is not a one-for-one comparison with baseball. It just isn't. I know that's going to sound like a crazy old man who wants to let the world die, and that's not how I feel. I would never be mad at a ballpark for putting up nets. But I'll tell you this. If you don't think that that will make a lot of actual baseball fans unhappy, you don't go to enough baseball games. It's as simple as that. I get to minor league yards all the time. And if you look at those seating charts when you buy tickets, they tell you when the nets end for the express purpose of allowing you to buy a ticket at which You do not have to look through a net, and you can interact with the people on the field. It's a thing. There's no way around that. And that's the reason why I think 20 Major League Baseball teams have resisted for so long. Because that stuff doesn't seem like a big deal until it goes away. Is it the most important part of baseball? Absolutely not. Is it a huge part? Certainly. There's no way around that. Now, the game is different now than it was 100 years ago. If you really wanted to get into the math, even though some 1,700 odd people get injured at baseball games a year by foul balls, you could say that number in the largesse of baseball is statistically negligible. You could. But it only takes one person, frankly, to die for that statistic to matter. I understand all that. Do not broad brush paint me as the guy who is saying nets are a bad thing at baseball parks. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you better believe there will be an appreciable difference in the game day experience if you cannot reach your hand out and touch someone on the field. And for all the ratings issues and reputation issues that baseball has, Major League Baseball for that matter, putting a further barrier between the actual product and the crowd, it might make everyone safer, but I don't know how many people it'll make actually happier who've stayed there and been there the whole time. My colleague Tim Kirchin talks about it all the time. Williamsport, he feels, is the safest place he can watch a baseball game because there's nets all over the field. I respect, I understand, and I agree with that. But the bigs is a little different. Minor league baseball is a little different. It's just not the same thing. The beauty of baseball is that on some level, people really understand it's a kid's game. But if you block the kids off, being able to touch the players that they love, it's not a kid's game anymore.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. All right, for the undefeated, in case you didn't know that. I also appear on Around the Horn every once in a while. Just letting you know that, too. Used to have a show, still do, on ESPN Radio called The Morning Roast. Myself, Mina Kimes, and Dominic Foxworth. If you want to jump in my mentions and get served on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio, the choice is yours. You want to give me a phone call, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Try to stay on topic, y'all. Right now, though, we're going to talk about Kevin Durant. It has been a tumultuous offseason for your boy, to say the least. Won the NBA Finals MVP. Thought that was going to be a good enough situation. Nah. Last couple weeks have been a little awkward. Came out with some shoes that had his stat lines from the NBA Finals. All sorts of motivational nonsense written on them. To be clear, I actually do like these shoes. I don't have a problem with this idea in itself in a vacuum. You need your own sneakers to be motivational tools for you to play basketball. That's fine. Bit of a straw man argument at this stage of the game, if you ask me, in terms of all the haters, but I'm not in his mention, so I don't know. Then he decides that he's going to take a shot at Under Armour, talking about nobody wants to wear Under Armours. Well, that's a little bit problematic because your teammate Steph Curry is Under Armour's main dude in basketball. So, number one, while bigging up your own shoes, you've sort of made this championship that your Warriors won all about yourself. Okay, you're the MVP. Understandable. Number two, you take a veiled shot, not even really a veiled shot, but what I'll just say, disrespected your teammate's sponsor. I think that's a reasonable way to break that down. And then number three, you get involved with a side burner account Twitter situation that's embarrassing on a social media level for even a high school freshman. Number 4, you come back and have to apologize, not have to apologize, but chose to apologize, talking about I went too far. My bad. That was childish, etc. Posting strange memes, things saying I got acne, I drink beer, I slide in DMs, I watch TV like the rest of y'all. All this adds up to what I'll just call an extremely bad summer for a guy that won an NBA championship. Now, why this is the case for Kevin Durant at this stage of his life and his career, I have a couple theories. I mean, we're moving into obviously reckless speculation zone, but I'm trying to be responsible about this. Which is this. When a guy like Kevin Durant comes up, now this is not talking about his home life per se, although I do think that plays a bit of a role. But when he went to Montrose Christian High School outside of D.C., it's a big deal. Went to Texas for a year, big deal. Came out, was in Seattle, big deal. Got to Oklahoma City, big deal player. Left, ended up at Golden State on his own volition, took less money by the by, and now can't deal with the fact that people don't seem to like how he's operating and people are willing to jump into his mentions at all times. I think that there is something to be said here about the fact that having not completed some of these sort of not basic, but some of these standard social steps that a lot of people take, now that he's finally under the gun, it's hard for him to deal. It's really, really hard for him to deal. And I do not wish that upon anyone. I certainly don't think it's funny, but I do think it's going to affect his future with the Warriors. Kevin Durant is now in your man's zone. It's not just about people on his team talking about him. By the by, apparently Draymond Green greeted him with a face-to-face laugh-at-you Playboy move, which, if you ask me, is not any sort of payback, is direct disrespect, indicating he don't like what's going on, but he's laughing it off for the sake of doing it. But Kevin Durant is in your man's zone, a.k.a. dudes in the league come to play the Warriors, and the first thing they're asking their homies on the Warriors who are not Kevin Durant is, Shannon, say it with me, what's up with your mans?
Yo, Draymond, yo, what's up with your mans, yo?
What's your mans? What's your mans doing? And you don't ever want to field that question. What's going on with your mans?
It's actually pretty interesting. We talk about this with Bomani as well. Like the term your mans, the funniest thing about your mans is that the person that's actually the mans never know that they're actually the mans.
Right. You're not, that is not something you indicate. You don't walk over and hand somebody the your mans hat. You only refer to him as your mans when your mans ain't there. That's why you don't want to have to defend your mans. Yo, what's up with your mans? Oh, that's the worst. You don't ever want to be your man. I've been your mans. All right?
Wait, did you know that you were your mans?
I found out after the fact that I had to change my ways in certain regards of my life. People were like, yo, my dog was like, your man's Yates doing too much. This has been a real part of my life. I've grown as a human, I'd like to believe, but nonetheless, Kevin Durant is in your man's zone right now. And that's not good for his future with the Warriors. You listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in here on a Friday. Nothing makes up for your fantasy football obsession like surprising your family with a bouquet from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order 36 autumn roses for just $36, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. But who wants to deal with that? If you're on the Warriors, you got 2 rings already. Kevin Durant was clearly the piece you needed to get beyond the Cavaliers. He was the finals MVP. He is a tremendous basketball player, extremely marketable person, and I believe someone who wants to do well and be a good teammate. But it seems he's having problems socializing or a socialization issue on some level in terms of how he interacts with the public. and clearly how he interacts with his teammates if he's not even thinking before banging out one of the main sponsors and one of the best players on the team. If not, some people would argue the best player on the team. That's your man's, though, Shannon.
If you remember, wasn't there a situation with Under Armour when they tried to court Kevin Durant?
That's true.
And apparently they tried to use the same recruiting tactic and slideshow that they used for Steph Curry and didn't change some of the slides.
There's a lot of issues around the sneaker stories with the Warriors. But what I'm saying is that when you go to the new school, that first school year is one thing. But that summer after that first school year is also important going to the next one. Because you get a little bit of a honeymoon. The honeymoon is over. Get your mans. You don't want that in practice. You don't want a situation like that where suddenly, let's just say you get into a little tussle on a practice court. And Draymond says to Clay, yo, man, get your mans. Your boy over there, I don't know what he's doing. Can't have that.
Well, I will say, though, I guess one positive for Durant in this regard is that Draymond is his man's.
Right. Well, that's true.
So that helps. That if you have the biggest mouth on the team as your guy.
That's key.
That's huge.
That's key. Now, understand this. More importantly, I love Kevin Durant. Go ahead on. Why don't you go ahead and slide out of Oakland, KD? Nice little landing spot for you. You been there? Mumbo sauce, chicken wings, go-go. You could be your mans in D.C. because everybody there is your mans. I'm just saying.
Are the folks in D.C. still holding out hope that Durant will one day come?
Obviously not. I'm just saying. This opens up a window. Opens up a window of him getting out of Oakland. If they don't like
but I will say, though, I think it's still early to assume that Durant's going to finish his career in Golden State, right?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't think he would want to do that either way.
Right. Okay, so if we assume for the sake of this conversation that Durant's not going to finish in Golden State, wouldn't you think that Washington would be at the top of the list for him?
Ask your mans. 888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Rob in Michigan, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Tremendous. You're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to – I don't understand all the flack he's getting over the social media gaffe. I mean, social media isn't reality. It's just an escape for most people. So
hold on, though. You're contradicting your own argument, though. He just said himself he takes it too seriously. So if it's serious for Durant, what are you saying?
I agree with that. I won't dispute you on that. But what's the big deal? He went after people who were attacking him. So what? Why is it such a big deal?
I don't consider it a big deal. I appreciate the phone call, Rob. I don't consider it a big deal. You see my mentions. I'm here for these clapbacks. What I'm saying is that he's the MVP of the NBA Finals. He's been an MVP in this league before. He's a grown man. This can't be affecting your mental game on this level with teammates the caliber of those you have in Oakland. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if I'm on your team, I'm like, dog, get it together. Or, yo, get your mans.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests appear via the Shell Pinto Performance Line. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. Joining us right now is Herm Edwards, ESPN NFL analyst. Herm, my Skins play the Raiders in a big matchup on Sunday night. I will tell you right now, I said before the season, I think the Raiders are going to win the Super Bowl and ride off into the sunset, into the desert. What do you think about this matchup, sir?
Whoa. I like the matchup, but pump your brakes now. Just slow down. Slow your roll. No, but I like the matchup in this sense. I think if you're the Raiders, the concern with the Raiders last year and even a little bit in the preseason was their inability to stop the run and at times give up big pass plays. You saw that in the preseason. You were wondering, they're going to get this thing fixed. Well, it looks like thus far they've done that. They're very soft inside. Their linebackers are the concern inside. Their secondary at times gives up big plays. But with that being said, they're 3-0. And to go on the road last year, they were very good on the road, 6-2. Opening up the season with the Tennessee, a tough team that can run the football, and did not allow them to do that. won that game going away. Last week they played the Jets at home, obviously a team that's struggling offensively. Put that game away. Now they play a team that is in a division that we don't know what that NFC East is yet. But Washington can run the ball, and they need to run the ball because they don't want to face this high-powered offense that the Raiders possess.
How good do you think Washington can be?
Well, I think they're as good as the quarterback will play. And, he's been a little bit wounded in the fact that his tight end seems to be injured quite often. He lost 2,000-yard receivers. One of them we saw last night in Garcon in San Francisco. The other one, Deshaun Jackson, is playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pryor is a young player, gifted, talented, but they're not on the same page. So that could be a problem. But they can run the football. Defensively, they're a little bit hit and miss at times. So, they're in the division, though. Right now, if you win a game, all of a sudden, you're almost tied for first in this thing. Everyone's talking about the Giants are so bad. I said, if the Giants win this week against Philadelphia, they're actually only one game out.
Well, let's stay there, Coach. What do you think the Giants need to do to fix this problem and right this ship? Because, as I said, I actually think McAdoo is going to be the first head coach fired in the league this season.
I know this. I think, football is about this, especially defensive football. The quarterback is the king of the castle. And when you allow the opponent to storm the castle and hit the king, in other words, the quarterback, that's a problem. Both these teams right now are struggling in this sense. They don't really have a good running game to rely on. When you look at the numbers, all of a sudden they're getting really skewed one way, and that's throwing the football. The Philadelphia Eagles are attempting 44 passes a game and only 16 runs. Now, that quarterback's been hit already 18 times, been sacked 8. Eli Manning, 30 passes a game, average about 35 passes a game, and only 15 runs. That's a bad balance.
Yeah. We're talking with Herm Edwards, ESPN NFL analyst on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Who's at the top of your power rankings right now, Coach? I've got the Falcons. Some people say the Broncos. What do you think?
Well, I think you got to consider the Falcons. They're the last team to obviously, with the records that are out there right now, they're undefeated. They played in the Super Bowl last year. It doesn't look like that's affecting them one bit. The next team that everybody's kind of liking right now and jumping, obviously on the bandwagon is, you like the potential of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You like the way that defense all of a sudden is starting to be like the Pittsburgh defense that you're used to talking about.
Right.
The AFC West probably has the best division with those teams. I think all three of them actually going to win 10 or more games. I like the Chiefs. They're a team that doesn't get a lot of consideration because people will call Alex Smith a game manager. I don't know if that's true. When you look at this offense, they're averaging about 33 points a game. They have some explosive players. Their defense is a defense that has the ability to rush the quarterback with Houston, Ford, and obviously Jones. You got a great corner in Peters that can take the ball away. So I think, there's some teams, but look, it's early. I've always said this. The first month of football in the National Football League, and I hate saying this. I hate saying this publicly. It's basically preseason. It's preseason games, but they count because you don't know who you are. You don't know. You have no idea because you don't actually play real football in the preseason anymore because you got to protect the players, and rightly so. So now these 4 games, you kind of figure out who you are offensively, defensively, special teams. Then you kind of shake the cards back up. You go, okay, these are the players we have. We're not getting new players. They don't sell in them at Kmart when the blue light comes on. We got to stick with these players. How do we adjust our system?
Yeah, but the thing is, Coach, is that ever since free agency, if you start 0-2, your chances to make the playoffs are almost nothing. I think it's 12% or something like that. So between the 2 0-2 teams that are playing this week, I don't know, Cleveland and Indianapolis, like what would you do to fix either of those teams? Obviously, neither one of those teams are going to make the playoffs, but there's 2 teams that are that bad that are facing off. What do you see in terms of them that you would fix if you were at the helm?
Well, I think if you're talking about Cleveland.
Yes, and the Colts, who are both 0-2.
Well, no, Cleveland's in a rebuilding. They're starting to look. We know where Cleveland's at. Cleveland's in the same boat San Francisco is, except they know who their quarterback is, Cleveland. Okay, so we know where they're at. The Colts, if Andrew Luck all of a sudden comes walking through the door in the next 3 or 4 weeks, you got a shot because the Rams will lock. Your offense is already better because we know. Look, that division has been won 9-7 last 3 years. Correct?
Yep.
You're okay with that? That's a fact. Okay. When you look at the, let's go look at the NFC West. Did you know this? The Rams are in first place. Did you not know that?
I heard that somewhere. I might have watched the game yesterday.
Okay, the Rams are in first place, so we're looking at that going, that's interesting. Then you go over to the North. Well, the last game that Aaron Rodgers played, his 2 tackles were on the sideline. They were like me and you, not participating. They were just watching the game. So when they did well, this is a better team. I'm worried about Minnesota if the quarterback can't come back. I worry about them. That's a problem, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously the huge issue. If you just stated if he's the king of the castle and you ain't got no king of the castle, you don't.
Right. And and the Lions, they're not little kitty cats anymore. They're actually growling, right? They paid the quarterback all that money, and people were upset. Why did you pay this guy? He's not worth it, man.
I like
that. Touchdowns, no interceptions. He's playing pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Last question I'll ask you, Coach.
Yeah.
Cowboys. Cardinals. Pretty good game. Also, I think 2 teams that are, look, I'm not saying they have identity issues. I'm just saying that the window is closing for the Cardinals. People think it's just opening for the Cowboys. Where are they at, in your opinion?
Yeah, no doubt. You make a great point. Cardinals are a team that has a formula similar to Denver, if they can apply it. The Denver formula was very simple. If we stop the Cowboys from running, which is their strong suit, our back-end players are good enough to cover their specialists that play outside the numbers. Arizona has the same formula. They have good corners. Peterson, obviously Matthews back there. They can cover the wide receivers and tight ends. Not going to stop them from running. Now, if you're the Cowboys, you got to get back to who you are. Now, they lost 2 offensive linemen. People aren't mentioning that a lot off that crew. Now, the Pro Bowlers are back. I like Zeke speaking up yesterday and being accountable for his actions last week, saying, hey, you know what? I let the team down. He put his name on it. That is a good sign. With that being said, this Cowboy team has to get their identity back this week against Arizona, run the football. If they can do that, they're the Cowboys that we thought they were going to be.
He's Herm Edwards, and he's the best-dressed former coach on the network. Thank you, Herm.
Thank you, my friend.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome to The Right Time with Bomani Jones, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Shell Penzo Performance Line, and my name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. If you watched football last night, you saw the Rams and the Niners. It was a Thursday night football game that we're not used to seeing because it was quasi-competitive. Rams won that bad boy by 2 points. It was an awful call at the end of that game that probably changed it more than it should have. I'm not saying I think the Niners would have won, but it was definitely something that mattered. What does that say about the quality of play in the NFL? I don't really know. I think that's tough. I think the NFL is currently at a point where there's just not that many good quarterbacks. This is ultimately my problem with people throwing around this elite word all the time. Sometimes people think that they get on these narratives and they think that it makes them smart because they want to get too involved in the hyper-minutia discussion of some level of conversation that you don't realize that once you pull back, it means, you might not know that much about football. Because let me tell you something. It ain't like there's a whole lot of elite quarterbacks that have been running around the NFL for 30 years anyway. There's a whole lot of bums who have played quarterback in the NFL. And right now we're at one of those moments where there's like 4 dudes that are good. There's like 10 other dudes that are kind of good. So I don't know that the overall quality of play is super down. I just think that in the past 10 years, we had a particularly good one. But more importantly, the Thursday night game has brought up an interesting point for me. And this has been discussed across a couple networks. I wouldn't go so far as to say ad nauseum, but I want y'all to know how I feel about this. Now, a lot of people think in the discussion of why ratings are down in the NFL or why the NFL is less popular, it's because the product has been diluted. And while I agree with that in part, I think there's a larger statement to be said about why it's getting diluted the way that it is. Thursday Night Football, obviously for clear reasons, is a lesser product. Less rest equals worse football. This is not a difficult thing to understand. Short weeks means teams do not play as well for physical reasons and for preparation strategy reasons. This is obvious to anybody who has a brain. Now, Monday Night Football Okay, we've dealt with that for a while. We're sort of used to that in our bloodstream, if you will. People don't like branching out much further than Monday nights. And when you get into the Londons of the world, folks' sensibilities then become offended. Because they feel like the NFL is doing way too much. And they might be. But let me tell you something about that London game. While the league thinks about whether or not they want to put a team out there in London. There's one amazing development that's come out of those London games, which the NFL can take forward with it and do very well with. And that's 10 a.m. games on Sunday. Ain't no reason you can't play a 10 a.m. game on Sunday that's not in London. I understand a large part of the NFL viewing audience is up in church talking to somebody they can't see at that time of day. That's fine. I respect that. But that doesn't mean that people won't stay home to watch it every once in a while if their team is involved. And it daggone sure doesn't mean that a whole bunch of other people won't watch them too. The game is diluted in the context of the non-Sunday factor, which is fixable. And here's how you fix it. Get these games off a Thursday night and put them on at 10 a.m. on a Sunday. That's all you got to do. This is a simple fix. Oh, what I wouldn't give. I got friends out here on the West Coast and telling me every single day of the week, oh, it's great. I get up in the morning, there's football on first thing. Why not make that available to the East Coast? It could be like a family game type of situation. Half the reason people won't want to go to these NFL games is because dudes show up so hammered and obliterated that nobody wants to have their family around that. Maybe you find a way to make that 10 a.m. game something that you understand just due to simple virtue of time. People aren't going to be able to be as drunk at. People want to get up, get there, and get it out of the way. I'd be 10 times more likely to go to an NFL game at 10 in the morning than I would one at 8 at night. This seems so obvious to me on so many levels. Okay, it's a little earlier in the day, but jet lag on the day, or not jet lag, but some level of tiredness on the day is very different than, I don't know, flying across the Atlantic Ocean. Seems like one would be a little bit easier to mitigate. 10 a.m. games on the East Coast need to happen in the NFL. And if it comes at the cost of Thursday Night Football, I am completely fine with that. The ratings might be a little lower. Okay. Go ahead and hit the early service. Get that short sermon out of the way. The junior pastor's probably ready for that anyway. Give him a chance. Give her a chance. 10 a.m. games would be glorious on so many levels. Little breakfast. It'd be a feature game too, Shannon. How great would that be? I would love that. I feel like I'm the only one that thinks this is a good idea.
That's a 7 a.m. kick for the folks out on the West Coast.
Forget the West Coast at that point. You already got the luxury of having games early anyway. It's one game. I'm not saying you put a rack of games at that. I'm saying you make the new feature slot a 10 a.m. game on a Sunday. You know what I mean? Maybe you got to incorporate a bye if a West Coast team has to do it because they're not getting enough sleep. West Coast teams coming to the East Coast lose like a mug anyway, so it's not like the competitive advantage is getting changed that much by moving the game up 4 hours. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. Our next top-ranked boxing title fight is tonight, y'all. Oscar Valdez puts his WBO featherweight title on the line against Genesis Cervania. The undercard starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, with the main event at 10:30 p.m. Eastern live on ESPN, ESPN Deportes, and the ESPN app. You don't like my idea? 10 a.m. game? Church football?
I think, as a one-off, yeah, and I get it for the purpose of that, but that church crowd, man, you're not going to be able to have any teams that are from the South playing in that game.
Go to the early service, y'all. Your team once a season? What's going on with your church?
It's funny. It's funny though to look at the number of people who start attending that Wednesday night service.
Yeah.
Just to get it in for the week.
Just to get it in. I'm saying this is doable. 888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Jeff in Hawaii, you're already on a different time zone. You like watching football in the morning?
That's why I was calling to let you know. Regardless, at the beginning of the season, football games start at 7 a.m. So if you're doing anything, if you wake up, you're brushing your teeth, you're eating breakfast, you're watching football, right? And the best part is if your team is on that early, when the game's over, you got your whole day still ahead of you.
Right.
It's not like you're planning your day around the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would hate to see that because that means the games out here would come on so much more earlier.
Oh, but you live in Hawaii. Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but like for the East Coast, I think it would be good if the NFL tried it because I think a lot of fans would appreciate that. You know, not everybody wants to wait until 10 a.m. for the game to start. And like you said, if it started that early, there's going to be a lot of people having a hard time getting blasted before the game starts. So I think you might be onto something there.
Thanks for the phone call, Jeff. Jeff missed the point of what I was saying, which was that, God forbid, you got to wait too long for a football game when you already live in Hawaii. I'm just assuming at that point that all of Hawaii is a paradise, and that was sort of a not fair presumption, but I appreciate that phone call. I wouldn't care what kind of football came on if I lived in Hawaii. I guess that's not my point there. 888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Think about this, NFL. Stop the Thursday night nonsense. Move that bad boy to Sunday mornings. I got to come up with a catchy name. I need a bit for this. I don't have a name yet. The Sunday morning football doesn't sound good. Sounds better than Thursday night football. Doesn't sound as good as Monday night football. But Sunday morning football, that needs to happen.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Joining us right now, ESPN The Magazine and Around the Horns of Mina Kimes. Joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mina, I just texted you a picture of my pants because Kate Fagan said that they were really cool today, and I want to know what you think.
They're a lot. They look like, there's like a motocross element. There's some strategic rips. They're coming up kind of up your ankles. It's a lot. That's all I'll say.
I was bummed because we shot this whole cold open thing for OTL that my pants might have been in, but it never made it, and we ended up going with something else. So the world did not get to see my sweet pants. I'm bummed about that.
Sadly, at least I did. Congratulations on your first win, man.
Around the Horn? Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I got Woody with a pretty good line, making jokes about bookstores not existing anymore, so I was happy about that. But more importantly, let's talk about West Coast football. You tweeted something last night, which I very much agreed with. You said that OPI call at the end of the Rams-Niners games kind of killed your buzz. What did you think overall about that game last night?
Well, I was so excited, right? I mean, it was such a thrilling game, especially the second half. They were trading blows back and forth. It was a shootout. There were turnovers. And then just to have it end that way with the OPI, I mean, what was so strange to me was for such a ostensibly ticky-tacky call, they barely talked about it, and we didn't get to see it from any other angle. So I don't know if Trent Taylor extended all the way and pushed off. It looked like they were kind of wrapped up to me, but I have no idea, Clinton, and it just kind of stunk, in my opinion, that such an exciting game had to end that way.
Where are you on Thursday Night Football as a general matter, of course?
So the thing, I've actually looked into this a lot over the years. Thursday Night Football tends to have worse teams, right? So if you look at whether they've had playoff teams over the last few years, it does tend to be worse competition. But the actual quality of the game is not worse statistically. There's not more turnovers and fumbles. It's not messier. So it gets kind of a bad rap, I think. But obviously this game was exciting. In 2 weeks, there'll be a bad game, and everybody will be, blaming Thursday Night Football all over again.
We're talking with Mina Kimes of ESPN The Magazine Around the Horn on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Clinton Yates filling in here on the right time with Bomani Jones. All right, I just got through talking about that KVV story, Kevin Van Valkenburg, about Eddie Lacy, and here was my thing about it, Mina. It wasn't just the fact that he talked about his weight and the public shaming and the internet relationship. It was the fact that he very specifically discussed his relationship with food, which on a detail level to me was extremely brave, because what people judge you for beyond just your inability to stay on a certain weight is how you choose to sort of do this I thought this was an incredibly, incredibly courageous thing from Eddie Lacy to do.
I agree. I mean, weight is so stigmatized in this country. It's not something that people are very open about or happy to talk about, and it's something that a lot of people in America struggle with. I posted that story, Clinton, and got a lot of, well, it's his job.
Mm-hmm.
How am I supposed to feel sorry for him? Well, it is his job, and he did lose weight. He does take it seriously. He's not saying he shouldn't have to do that. He's just saying it's hard. And I don't know, it just kind of bums me out, the lack of empathy for that kind of admission, which I agree with you, I think is very courageous.
What is it like having him in Seattle, though, with that kind of thing? I mean, I don't want to sound overly crass about this, but, if you see him around town, how does that go? Do you hear stories about him in places in public in Seattle?
Not really. It's a tough situation in Seattle. It's a very crowded running back group. And I think more importantly, it's, as everyone knows, not a good offensive line. So Eddie Lacy was actually, before he got injured, pretty efficient in Green Bay in 2016. He was averaging, I think, over 5 yards a carry. He was quite good. And so, he has not performed super well. He's only played in one game this season in Seattle. But it's a difficult situation. So there's a chance Seattle could let him go, but I think he'll still be in the league this year regardless.
We're talking with Mina Kimes, ESPN The Magazine, and Around the Horn panelist and colleague, on the show Pennzoil Performance Line here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. What's the matchup you're looking forward to most this week in the NFL? Non-Seahawks related, please, Mina.
There are a few games. I think Falcons-Lions is one that I am particularly looking forward to just because everybody expected the Falcons to come back. Well, I don't know if everyone expected to come back and not have any Super Bowl hangover at all, but, people thought they didn't lose a lot of players. They're a good team. The Falcons, I think a lot of NFL analysts looked at them and saw how lucky they got in close games last year, how bad the defense was last season, and thought they would take a lot of steps back. They surprised some people. Their defense looks a lot better than I think a lot of NFL experts expected. So it doesn't get more challenging than the Falcons' offense. So, compared to the Giants' offense, which is about as non-challenging as it gets. So I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not they can, keep them in the 20s and keep that Lions offense in the game.
I've been talking last segment about my thoughts regarding football in London. And I might have said this before on the Morning Roast ding, which is that the biggest takeaway from the football in London experiment for me is the great time slot of games at 10 a.m. Eastern. How do you feel about this as a matter of fact?
Now I live in California, so it stinks. I loved it when I lived in New York. I love that feeling of getting up and getting those early morning games. Now it's just too early for me. I love the London games. One thing that's always amazing to me about them, Clinton, is they're so popular. Especially now as we're seeing, stadiums in LA failing to sell out. British people love American football. They sell out all the time, and it's really been a huge success story for the league and for Jacksonville too.
See, I'm trying to come up with a cool name for it, Mina, so that we can sell this to America. I think it needs a catchy name. Somebody said Sunrise Service Football. People have been coming up with all sorts of names in my mentions. They're not that funny, but I feel like if you have one good one, this can be something that people bite on.
How about Top of the Morning?
Top of the Morning. It would have to not be in the U.S., though, at that point. That doesn't really work. That's
true. Also, I apologize for my accent.
It's okay.
It was really bad.
Last thing I'll ask you, Mina, because this is of extreme importance in the Trash Palate, also known as Trash Palate world. For those of you who don't know, Mina and I do a radio show with Dominic Foxworth called The Morning Roast. It is on hiatus, air quotes. And Mina has revealed that she likes very basic foods and so on and so forth. But it is obviously the first day of fall coming up, which means pumpkin spice lattes are back in fold. However, Starbucks is premiering something in a couple weeks called the Maple Pecan Latte. How do you feel about this, Mina?
I mean, I don't know if I have a sophisticated enough palate to differentiate between maple pecan and the other nut flavors that are already out there, walnut, almond, almond butterscotch, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I guess, they're going to run out of flavors soon, right?
Right.
They're running out of nuts. They're going to run out of fall flavors.
I kind of like maple pecan lattes. MPLs. I'm already calling them
MPLs!
Right now. I haven't even ordered one yet.
MPLs! Wow, okay. I like pumpkin spice, too. I'm not going to lie.
She's Mina Kimes. She writes for ESPN The Magazine, and I think we're facing off next week on Around the Horn, so that should be a fun one.
going down.
Thank you, Mina.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back Monday for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.